The talk today is embracing our desires. And I think we are moved when we hear Martin Luther King because his whole life was about his desire for truth and justice. He was willing to give up his life. He knew he was risking his life. It wasn't something that just sort of came out of nowhere. He was getting death threats. His family was getting death threats. And even in the face of this, he continued to stand for truth and justice and for oneness, for us to really stand in true love with all people. No walls, no separation. That is someone whose deepest desire was in alignment with his actions. And we all feel it. We're all moved by it. And so we just, as we are exploring this throughout this year, what our own spiritual path is, does our spiritual path, this path that we have to awakening, is infused with that depth of desire that we hear when we hear his voice and we hear him talk about his dream? Do we feel that in our own life? Does our path contain that depth, that richness, that passionate desire? Certainly, Martin Luther King was inspired by Gandhi. They both had a passion for truth and for justice. And so he learned, we inspire one another. So when we listen to Martin Luther King, it's not to become Martin Luther King, but do I want to follow in that same path? Do I feel that inspiration for my own actions? Are there things that I can learn from him just as he learned from Gandhi and they both learned from their religions, Christianity and Hinduism? And I want to talk to those two teens back there, because this is about you too. That desire isn't just about adults. That we are all, the reason why every human being on this earth is here is because we had these intense desires that burst us through the time-space continuum and brought us onto this planet. So what I believe is that every one of us does have this intense passionate desire, not just a little passionate desire. And what happens sometimes, and I'm saying this to the teens, but it's to all of us, we start doing what other people think we should do, what our parents think we should do, or what our school thinks our do, our teachers, or our community, or what the culture around us telling us what's important. And so what happens as we get older is we start saying, no, I got to find what my desire is. And for I know most of us, we wouldn't be here if we hadn't begun asking that question, because we didn't sometimes ask it when we were really young. And we waited, and so what happens is we get layers put upon us, and we have to pull all those layers away to get really in touch with what we wanted. I didn't really start asking into my early 20s, what do I really want? Who do I really want to be? I did all the things. I went to school. I went to college. I did all those things. But it wasn't until I really stepped out on my own to really saying, who am I and what do I really desire? And it took me about 10 years before. That's how it takes a long time. So sometimes the initial challenge is just to get in touch with what do I really want? What do I really desire to fulfill on this earth plane? So Mason and Julian, I hope you guys are asking yourself those questions right now in your life. What do I really desire? In Hinduism, they talk about there's 4 main desires. I don't know if some of you have read this in the book yet. And the 4 main desires is pleasure. The first desire is pleasure. Pleasure is I want to feel good. I want to do things that soothe me, that comfort me. I want to be around. I want to watch TV, surf the internet, go out and just sort of do things that just allow my mind to be distracted. Be in relationships that may not work but do much for me, but they make me feel good. Have sort of habit patterns that are sort of comforting me but not necessarily serving me. So we have all sorts of things that fulfill our pleasure instinct. And we strive after that. We desire to be filled with it. And then what Hinduism will say is that eventually you'll get bored with it. You'll get satiated with it. And that will no longer become your primary desire. So you'll move on to something else. And the next desire they talk about, the pleasure is a very personal. It's your own world. I just want to make myself feel good. The next one is wealth, power, and fame. That's the next desire. Now, this includes other people. Now, I'm moving outside of my own little world of making myself pleasurable, and I want to now feel the joy of success. I want to feel the joy of power and fame and wealth, and these become really driving energies. Desire is our motor. It's the thing that's driving us. It's what's getting us up in the morning. And there's a fire behind it, and we have to succeed. And often, for many people, this can last a lifetime. And in the way Hinduism perceives the world, that we live many lifetimes. So where we tend to, in the Western world, think of things as being very much now-oriented. Everything is right now. In Hinduism, everything is many, many lifetimes. They're really in not a lot of hurry or desperation. So there's this lifetime, so fulfill your desires now. And what I like about Hinduism is there's never any judgment about desires. I think in the Western teachings more, but in some aspects of religion, we hear a lot of these are bad things to have pleasure. It's a bad thing to want power, money, and fame. But Hinduism recognizes that we're human beings. That's why we're here. That's what put us here, are these desires. And to pretend that they're not there, to repress them, actually makes them very unhealthy and doesn't serve anyone. So it was even as we were reading these desires, there's a group of us that meet twice a month on Thursdays. It's the Self-Realization Fellowship, which is the organization that Yogananda started, and they have these home study lessons. So we've been meeting twice a month, going through the home study lessons. And just this last week, Yogananda was writing about you have to do well in your business, and it was all about doing great in business. And then it led to the other desires, and he went through the exact same. In Houston Smith's, you have the 4 desires, and he went through the exact same desires in his lessons. And it's so clearly an understanding in Hinduism. Yes, succeed at business. It's good. This is not a bad thing. It's not distracting you from God. There's a reason why we have these desires, and we're here to fulfill them. But eventually we find that can be limited. That's the understanding, is that with these are sort of progressive desires, that there's only so much. Not everybody can be famous, because then it loses the whole idea of fame. The idea of fame is that some people are famous because that's what makes them special. Some people are more successful than others. So there becomes a separation. There becomes a limitation. There's a sense of lack. And again, there can be a place of unfulfillment. I also like something that C.S. Lewis said about desire, which is it's the desire itself that drives us, and then once we get it, we don't want it as much. He was using it in terms of relationships, that so many stories, plots in books are about getting the relationship, because once you're in the relationship and the honeymoon stage is over and you've done all that, and once you have it, then you're just right back with your life again. The excitement is the not having, and that's really what's this motor behind desire. I don't have. So for some people, having money, power, fame, I need to have that. I don't have it, I need to have that. And that drive will keep them going, not just for one lifetime, but maybe multiple lifetimes. But eventually that's going to get satiated. That's going to feel like it's limiting, it's not enough. And so we move on to the next 2 desires. And the next 2 desires, he was pointing out, have a little aspect of renunciation to it, in that in order to fulfill them, we actually have to give up some things. We have to renounce some pleasures, but we want to be of service. We want to, he calls it duty, a sense of, I'm here to be of service to the world. It's no longer about just filling what is good for me. Now I'm about giving. I'm about giving back to the world. And so for many of us, you might feel that deep desire. You no longer have this deep desire for money, wealth, and fame. I know so many people in the community who are, I just want to give. How can I create a world that works for everyone? How can I create a world that makes it better, and whatever my gifts are, whatever is unique to me? And that becomes a different orientation of desire, and that becomes the motor, the drive that wakes us up. And then the last desire is the desire for God, the desire for total enlightenment, to become fully awake to the oneness and union of all life, and that we are each individually one with that oneness, and that this is not just an abstract concept, that we actually become that enlightened self. So these would be all the spiritual masters and teachers, and that becomes the motivating drive on our spiritual path. As Houston Smith is going through these 4, here are the desires, is the idea that somehow when we go to the higher desires, we no longer have the lower desires. And what I believe is that all those desires are happening all of the time. I don't think any of us let go of pleasure, the desire for any of them, pleasure, work, fame, power. It's always there on some level. I was just reading something about Gandhi, who even in his later years, 70s, he died at 80, I think, was still dealing with the desire for sexual desire, even though he had been celibate since his late 30s. It was still something he was working on, that we're still human. As long as we're in the human body, we're going to still want pleasure. We're going to still want fame, power, money. So what becomes is, what's the predominant desire? What's that motor that's really getting me, that's really charging me up? Michelle texted me this beautiful short interview piece. I thank you for that. Do you mind if I share it? It was with Oprah Winfrey talking to David Brooks, who is a columnist for the New York Times. And he was talking about, it's less about what David Brooks was saying, he was repeating what St. Augustine said, that he called them, St. Augustine called them not desires but loves, and that we have many loves. And his definition of sin, St. Augustine's definition of sin, was that when we put the wrong loves, he said we should put our loves in priority, our desires in priority. And when we put the wrong loves in the wrong priority is when we get diseased, when we're out of alignment with ourselves. So if we put love of money before love of family, then we're going to, if we lie to get more money because money is really important to us, but we forget about the love of family, then we're going to feel out of alignment with ourself. And so St. Augustine's view is that our idea was to not to deny that we have these other loves, these other desires, but to put them in the right order. So as you're on your path, on the spiritual path, first of all, I just have to say, one thing I love about communities like this is that our path isn't given to us. Everyone here, you are creating your own path. That there's no one saying, here, this is your path. Even as we go through Yogananda's home studies, he has a very definite path. He believes in all paths, but he said, here's mine. And he gives it right down the line. This is what you should be doing. And we're all clear, it's not our path to do just exactly what he says he's doing. We're learning from it. But if those who want to follow that path, they're just given the path. This is the path, take it, and it's yours. We get to all co-create our path with the divine within us. And that's what's very exciting. So it's important that we show up to our role in it, that we're here. We don't have anyone telling us. There's no divine authority out there telling us how to live. It's all coming from within, so we need to take responsibility. What are the priorities? What are the desires? We all have multiple desires. Let's not pretend that we don't. What are the desires that we want to be our strongest motivating factor when we get up in the morning? What do we want what desire that is driving my day? Is it the deadline that I have for a project that's due tomorrow? Is it to make more money? Is it to change lives? Is it to make the world a better place? Is it to know God more than I've ever known it before? What is that motivating primary desire on my path when I wake up? And here's the key. So this gets to my final point. I don't know if it's my final, it's a point. We'll see if it's a final point. Which is honesty. As I was being with the talk, I actually was going to do honestly, what do I desire? I think one of the greatest challenges on this path is not being honest. And one reason why we're not honest is because we have a bunch of shoulds still running around in our head. If I love God, I shouldn't want pleasure. If I love God, if God's first in my life, I shouldn't want money, fame, power. There's three of them. You know all three of them. Money, fame, power. But when we give our life to the truth, this divine presence in us knows who we are, and it needs us to be who we are. It is not asking us to be someone we're not. There's do you know those master classes they have online? You can get them online, and so they have a lot. I saw them first with actors. There's a bunch with actors and directors. You take it. You can, for like $90, you can take an online class with a famous director. Steven Spielberg did one. Helen Mirren, they were the actors. Well, I just saw one with Steph Curry, and you can now buy it. So I listened to the advertisement of taking this master class with Steph Curry, and he's so full of life. He said, I was always the smallest whenever I played basketball. I was the smallest on the team. I had to work harder. And he's showing these exercises he does. And as he's just an advertisement, but you can just feel the passion that he has for what he's doing. And now we could say, well, what is he going after? Basketball. How's that going to make the world a better place? How is that making heaven on earth? We could, and I'm saying we do this to ourselves. What I'm doing isn't very important. What I'm doing isn't going to make the world a better, he's obvious because we can see him, but we say that in our own head. That our drives, it's not holy enough, it's not sacred enough. But he's doing exactly what he came on this earth to be doing, and he does it extremely well because he lets that drive him. It's pushing him. And I don't even play basketball. Being from Cleveland, I hate to admit this, I don't actually watch basketball games. Unless it's an NBA championship, I'm not interested. Oh, I watch Julian's basketball games. I love your basketball games. But I'm just saying, I'm not a basketball aficionado, but I loved watching this little video of him because when you see anybody who's on fire with anything, we're magnetized. You can't help it. They're on fire. And we feel our own inner core come alive. We feel that own inner desire. I want to be that passionate about something. I want to get up and feel that fire, that drive, that motor that keeps me going. And so And then I think of people like Steph Curry and so many professional athletes who then give back so much. They give back to hospitals and people in need and do service on a much wider scale than if they had never become famous or basketball stars. So they're turning it around and using it for good. They're helping people develop. If he had not followed his desire, he might have done something else but not as well, and he wouldn't have had such a big impact on the world around him. If we don't honor our desires, often that's a motor that's running, and if we pretend that it's not there, or we kind of pretend, but we know it's there, but we don't want to give it, we're embarrassed by it, what happens is it's going to come out in an unhealthy way. So there's many examples. We are full of the Me Too world right now of people who've done extraordinary things in the world, but on the side, these lesser desires for pleasure are being abused. There's hundreds of thousands of years of history of people in power who are on the side, sleeping with a lot of people, having affairs. We have, in spiritual teachers, misuse of sex, of addiction, of alcohol, of money, that so many stories over and over again of people who do great things, but these other sides are not being dealt with. And we are now evolving to realize we have to be in a healthy relationship with all aspects of ourselves, with our whole being. We can't just cut off that part and say, well, I have this little desire, but I'm embarrassed by it, or I shouldn't have it, because then it's going to act out. It's still going. It's still there. Those motors of desire are still there. Just because I'm choosing to ignore it does not mean it's not going to come back and affect me in some other way. I remember the reason why I was so taken by this reading, I had forgotten about these 4 desires in Hinduism. Because 2 years ago, I was at Barnes & Noble, and I was sitting at my table journaling, and I was very conscious that I was having this very sort of pedestrian desire, and I was embarrassed by it because in that moment I realized I wanted it more than I wanted God or spirituality. And so I just admitted it. I said, sorry, Spirit, I really want this more than you right now. And I can own it, and I can say it. And suddenly there, Yogananda, it was such a distinct moment, which is why I remember it so well, because suddenly there was Yogananda in my awareness sitting in the chair with me. And he said, you can have it. There's nothing wrong with this. And he immediately started helping me get this desire that seems so embarrassing. It was something I'm not even going to say it here. It's just like, but I have them. And he didn't judge me at all. And I remember being so surprised at that. Well, wait, you're a spiritual teacher. You're always saying everything is about God. We should always know about God. We should give up everything for God. And it's okay. This is part of being alive on this planet. And what it did was it allowed me to go towards this desire to get it and realize I didn't really want it after all. But had I not done that, it would have been this motor going, oh, I don't really want that. I'm too above that. I don't see those things, right? We do that. All human beings do that, which is why we have so much stuff that we've split off from ourselves, because we have all these big moral judgments about how we should be as a spiritual being and what that looks like, and that can become incredibly destructive. We can love God with our whole heart, body, mind, and soul and wake up to it and still have all these other desires. And so our job as being the masters, our CEOs of our spiritual path, of our journey, of the co-creators of our journey, is to learn how to be in relationship with all of this in the most healthy way possible. And honesty is that place. So the invitation, obviously, this week is not just this week, but on the spiritual path, as your spiritual path, to constantly be in touch with what is the motor that's driving me. How many motors do I have going on? How many different desires do I have going on? Are some of them battling each other? And rather than having them battle each other, just say, which ones are my highest priority in this moment? And it can change day to day. You know, there's some days where I know this is what I want. But other days, I'm like, I kind of want this too. Be honest about it. Be the master, be the responsible CEO of your company, of your path. Recognize what your desires are, and then allow them, if they're healthy, as long as they're not hurting anybody, how can I fulfill them? Because I guarantee you, if you don't fulfill them, they're going to hang out for lifetimes. We're here because, well, okay, this is Hinduism. I might change my mind in another religion, but right now, we are here because these deep desires have birthed us here, that we need to fulfill them. That's the entire, I don't know if you all know how much you know about Hinduism, so I guess I should explain it. So Hinduism, what keeps the wheel circling, which keeps this earth going, is desire. We are here because we have desires and we have to get them fulfilled. We break off from, so when you die, you're going to come back because you're going to have your unfilled desires. Those things that you haven't fulfilled yet, that you were pretending you didn't have, you have to come back and you have to fulfill them. What breaks you off the cycle is no longer having those desires. No longer having to come to a point of desirelessness. When we are free, genuinely, not just authentic in our head or conceptually, but deeply in our subconscious mind, on every level and dimension of our being, when we are free from all desire, we are free from the cycle of life and death, and we can leave this planet forever and move on to higher levels and stations of evolution. But until we are free from those desires, we will continue on this cycle of evolution. So it doesn't serve us to not pay attention and take those desires seriously. Because in this room, we may have people who are at the same level of a Martin Luther King, but you just haven't caught yet the depth and the importance of your desires. Every desire that you have is important. It's essential. It needs to be fulfilled as long as it doesn't hurt anyone. And if it's a desire that's hurting you or anybody else, it needs to be healed. If it's a desire that's hurting yourself or anybody else, it needs to be healed or it needs to be fulfilled. And as we do that, with all levels, pleasure, power, fame, and wealth, with service to other beings, we start to break free. Because even with service to other beings, if that's why we get up in the morning, that's wonderful, but we're also going to find out that it's never ending. That people are always in pain. As long as we're in this world of duality, there's going to be suffering. And we can continue to give service and continue to give service and continue to give service. But if our intention, I remember feeling this when I worked at the psychiatric hospital. I didn't even realize that I had a sense that somehow it was going to end, like if I kept giving myself, and I realized, this is going to never end. We're in the world of humanity. And if I'm serving because I think I'm going to make some progress, I'm living in illusion. I might make progress with individuals, but as a whole, this earth has a lot. Martin Luther King, Gandhi, we've had amazing leaders. Mother Teresa have given service. And still there's pain, still there's suffering. And that's where I got into, we have to wake up as a culture, as a world, as an earth, that until we collectively move from duality to oneness, which is really what Joel Goldsmith is talking about in Thunder of Silence, that all the pain that we suffer is not something we individually have created. It's just this mass hypnosis of duality. And when we wake up from the hypnosis and realize that there really is only one, and we live from, through, and as this one without, he's very big on letting go of our desires and our attachments to even good things, to let it all go, that's when we become break free. That's what all the mystics are saying. But we don't get there. You might have heard a lot of teachings talk about fear. And we go, we don't believe in fear. And the idea was to get people to resist this world. What Hinduism is saying, you don't get there by resisting your desires. It takes longer, actually, because then you have to heal how much you hurt yourself by resisting your desires. Embrace your desires. You don't get to that freedom by resisting or fearing your desires, but embracing them. And then we can find within ourselves, when we hear someone like a Martin Luther King, and realize that passion, that same drive, that willing to give up everything for what we believe in is in us too. That same fire. These are layers. We get rid of the layers, and we find our passion. We meet in Rain of Gold, we meet little Lupe. She's innocent, age 6. All she wants to be is with her mom. She's just so happy. She loves the earth. She wakes up in the morning, and thank you, God, for everything. She thanks God for the miracle of the day, and she's just this pure innocence. And I thought, oh, she's desireless. That's why we love children. They're in a place of desirelessness. They're just happy with whatever's in the moment. It's not driving them yet. It's there. It hasn't been hidden. That's what we have to do, this growing up process, is to become conscious of it and fulfill it. Y'all with me? So let's go into this prayer. I desire to go into prayer right now. How grateful I am to know that I'm standing in a room fully of a conscious and awake beings that recognize that there is only one power and one presence. That though we all have unique names and forms and personalities and paths, that behind all of us, behind all the personality, behind all the stuff, is this one power, this one presence. And it is the only source. It is the only thing that is eternal and everlasting, that has never birthed and it has never died. It is always free. It desires nothing, for it already has everything. It is everything. In this moment, we just align ourselves with the isness that is always already everything. There's nothing in this moment, when we consciously align with who we really are, there's nothing to strive for, not even enlightenment. Enlightenment already exists. It doesn't come and it doesn't go. That part within us that is always already enlightened, fully enlightened, that's who we are in this moment. I claim and accept that this enlightened self is conscious and awake as each and every individual expression in this room. And that we allow ourselves just to simply bask in the pure joy, the pure bliss that is in this being moment. We allow ourselves to know what it feels like to have everything and to be everything. That we are one with each other, we are one with this building, we are one with Livermore, we are one with the Bay Area, with this country, with this planet, with all the cosmos and the galaxies upon galaxies. We are one with the multidimensional planets and worlds beyond what we can even humanly imagine. We are one with it all right here and right now. We do not need to move, we do not need to change or fix anything for us to be any more one with all life than we are in this moment. All the abundance and the beauty and the harmony and the health and the love and the joy and the peace that has ever been and ever will be is right here and right now. We are it. And we claim and accept and hold that this infinite eternal oneness is animating every atom and cell of our body temples. It is every organ and action and function of our physical and emotional and mental body. On every level and dimension, we are swimming in the immersion of enlightened self. That there's nothing that is outside of this enlightened self. Any old rejected parts of ourselves are now embraced as this one power and this one presence. Anything that we have ever felt is not enough is embraced one power and one presence. There is no other. Any other human beings, animals, plants, nations, groups, planets, anything where we have a sense of otherness is dissolved into the illusion. And what arises is the pure awareness that we are one with all of it. We are one with all life, all sentient life form, all planets, all dimensions. There is no separation ever. The dark and the light are as one, as our conscious awareness in this moment. This is heaven now. We are it. We are it in the actions that we choose. We are it in the words that we speak. We are it in the conversations that we have. We are it in the work that we do. We are it in the play that we do. We are it in the community, in our families, in our homes, and as citizens of this world. We are this one life, this one power, and this one presence where there is no opposite. I celebrate this, I give thanks for this, and I know there's nothing else but this. In deep abiding gratitude, I just joyfully accept this word as truth, knowing it is already fulfilled as all of us in this room and all life even now. Thank you, infinite and eternal one, for being so fully yourself right now and for always. We release this word now, we let it be, and we say together as one, and so it is. Amen.
And so it is, and so it is, and so it is. Amen. 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 And so it is.